Hello everyone. We are looking at a new changed HRE mechanic in this video. I read the change in the 1.32 changelog and had to test it out myself. That HRE mechanic is the decentralized branch of HRE reforms. Yeah, I know, I can already hear your groans and you saying how centralized branch is obviously the better one, but hear me out. Before this patch, decentralized HRE was a joke and it wasn't even used for unimportant things like role-playing or multiplayer. Just kidding. So the only logical choice was to go centralized and revoke the privilege and get a vassal's form, the usual route of playing anyone in HRE. But in the new patch, the centralized branch is not that bad. I tried a full run starting as Austria and it went pretty well. In this video, I'm not going to bore you with every little detail of my Austria playthrough. If you're looking for a guide on how to play Austria, there's a link to one of my older videos. That strategy still largely works. Make sure you're subscribed here as well, so you don't miss out on my EU4 guides and content. Alright, I started as Austria with a regular Bohemia PU, although I did take the province of Prague because in this current patch it has a monument that gives Imperial Authority modifier. I believe monuments are part of the Leviathan DLC, so if you don't have the DLC, don't worry about it. I got some good early RNG and got the Milan succession as well, and I passed the first reform in 1458. A bit later, I was also able to rein in the Italians, and so that ended the Shadow Kingdom event, which gives plus 25 Imperial Authority. Later, once I had the Expand Empire CB after passing the third reform, I forced a few nations to join the HRE, especially in the Balkans. This does generate some AE, so keep an eye on that. By 1491, I was able to pass the fifth reform, the Perpetual Diet, after which we can choose to go either decentralized or centralized paths. By the way, I also got the Burgundian inheritance. However, Burgundy had lost some of its provinces and also a couple of its vassals. And also Hungary had lost Croatia as a vassal, so I missed out on a lot of provinces, but that's just RNG, you know. Another bad stroke of RNG luck meant Protestant Reformation spawning a fair bit early in 1494, and so then it was time to just keep force converting the little HRE nations turning heretic. And while I needed to go to war constantly, of course I was hit by a regency of 5 years, which was pretty brutal. But still, I had the reformation pretty much under control, and in 1503 I passed my first decentralized reform, which gives plus 3 free cities, which gives us a bit more imperial authority every month. By the way, the province of Prague that we took earlier, we need to convert it to Catholic before we can upgrade the monument. So I had to wait a long time before I could convert the province, and finally in 1504 the monument was upgraded to level 1, which gives plus 0.05 imperial authority. My suggestion here is to bump it to level 2 as soon as possible. The plus 0.1 imperial authority helps a lot. So at this point I was making plus 0.43 imperial authority with only 2 heretic princes in the empire. And of course, once I got a good heir, the game decided to take it away from me because RNG. I even got a second regency council later in game. Anyways, eventually in 1518 I managed to pass the third decentralized reform, which gives plus 1 elector and a massive imperial authority growth modifier. I had 59 provinces in the empire at the time, so I got plus 59% modifier, which means now I was making plus 0.8 imperial authority per month. Pretty decent. Soon after in 1521, I passed the fourth decentralized reform, and this one is massive. The more income and dev cost is fine, but now the HRE members don't get any aggressive expansion against the emperor when we take non-HRE provinces. Which means it's so much easier to just maintain good relations with everyone. The electors will always vote for you, and you can pass the reforms without any opposition. So this was me in 1523. As you can see, I have a smattering of provinces all over. It's actually super important to have those so we can create CBs on heretic princes easier and keep the reformation in check. And finally in 1526, I was able to pass the final decentralized reform, the Reichskrieg. I probably mispronounced it, but that's okay. With this reform, we can create a CB on any neighboring nation not in the HRE to add them to the HRE. To use the CB, first we go to the Emperor Actions and click on Declare Reichskrieg. This costs 25 imperial authority and the CB is valid for 5 years. So I used this against Poland first. And this war was poor little Poland against the whole HRE. So 13k troops against like 500k. Absolutely ridiculous. Now we can use the Expand Empire Peace option to add Poland to the HRE. Note here that it costs 90% war score, and this option is capped at 90% war score no matter how much dev the nation has, which is so broken. It also generates some imperial authority based on the amount of development being added to HRE. And yes, it causes some aggressive expansion, but remember the earlier reform we passed means the HRE doesn't get any AE from it. absolutely broken. So I went ahead and added a few more small nations surrounding the HRE. Even the mid-sized Teutonic Order gives us 72.5 imperial authority. We used only 25 imperial authority to get the CB, and so we are net plus 50 in this case. And that will be the case for most nations. Soon though, I had a coalition, so I decided to just attack France with the new Imperial Realm War CB and fight the coalition along with it. As I had all of HRE with me, this war was not very hard. And honestly, for most of the smaller wars, you can just park your armies and keep them drilling and let the AI minions do all the work. It's really broken. Well, in this war, Ottomans decided to enforce peace, which I of course refused, and they joined the war on my enemy's side. Immediately after, Mamluks decided to join the war on my side using the Great Powers mechanic. Also, I got Crusade bonuses. So yeah, this war was pretty fun actually. In the end, I humiliated the Ottomans, even spawned printing press in the meantime, and eventually added France to the HRE, which gave us only 814.8 imperial authority. Of course, the imperial authority only goes up to 100, so it's useless, but it's still fun to see this broken mechanic in action. You can use some of the imperial authority to bestow grace using emperor actions. This gives us plus 50 positive relations with that nation. So as you can imagine, I decided to abuse this broken mechanic as much as I could. I added Russia to the empire, then Great Britain, all of Iberia, and all of Scandinavia. Couple of things I noticed. Here you can see France hates me and we have rivaled each other. And despite the bad relations, they will always help you in the imperial wars. It's so broken. I obviously attacked the Ottomans as well. However, I found that you can attack heathen nations, but you cannot use the expand empire button on them. So instead, I just released a bunch of nations in the Balkans from Ottomans. And this does not cost any Diplo points when we use the Imperial Realm CB. Like I've been saying, it's absolutely broken. Alright, so early 1600s, I had all of Europe in the HRE, basically every province I could have because non-European provinces cannot be added to the HRE. That is pretty overpowered, scary looking HRE, and I think it's a super fun mechanic to abuse. Although you cannot really world conquest while going decentralized route because the HRE doesn't count as your subject. Or can you? Well, I decided to revoke all the decentralized reforms and go the centralized reform route after this. A bit of work, but it's doable. Basically, you can revoke reforms if you lose a war. So attack someone small in the HRE who has a lot of small allies. Then you can revoke one reform per peace deal when you separate peace them. You can also revoke reforms at the cost of 50 imperial authority, but that's just too slow and it costs some Diplo rep. One more minor thing here, do not pass this final reform where no one in HRE can attack another because you will need it to put down all those heretic princes. You should pass this reform only after the Age of Absolutism starts. Anyways, I started going the centralized reforms route after and managed to revoke privilegia in about 20 years. Remember here that only nations that back the reform will become your subject, and anyone who opposes the reform won't become the subject. But you will get claims on their territory, and these claims only last 25 years. So, the best way to use this would be to keep the decentralized reforms until you own all the world, then revoke reforms in a war or two, and take a couple of decades to pass the centralized reforms and revoke the privilege. Then we attack the nations that did not join our vassal swarm using our free temporary claims, and that world conquest is going to be super easy. Now, some of you might be wondering if this decentralized HRE is better than centralized one. If you are just playing an expansionist game, then no. Centralized is always going to be better if you optimize it well. But if you're like me and you have played the HRE game multiple times with revoking privilege, this new overpowered decentralized route gives you a fun second option. And I've said this before, in a game like EU4 that has been around for so long, it's always great finding new ways to play the game. I personally had a lot of fun playing the decentralized HRE. Let me know in comments what you think of this strategy and if you have ever tried it, even in a roleplay or multiplayer scenario. That is all for this video. You're watching a Radio's Guide. Thank you for your time and I'll see you all in the next one.